Hey there, this is Pastor Dan, First Lions Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is Friday. This is our Friday devotional. And I've been thinking a lot about this idea of lamenting. As I've watched the pictures of the war in Ukraine, or the war against Ukraine, it's a bit one-sided, I believe, but as I've watched it, my heart has gone out to the people there and how they're suffering, and to the people of Russia who are suffering. And this idea of lamenting is to acknowledge that there is suffering in the world, and there's suffering that happens to me and it happens to you. And when we're suffering, sometimes we don't know what to do about it. Sometimes we get angry, we get frustrated, but we're reminded that we ought to carry our laments, which are a form of complaint, faith-filled complaint, to the God who is able and over our world. And I'm reflecting this week in our conversation on Sunday out of Lamentations. Lamentations was believed to be written by Jeremiah, and he is both watching and remembering the destruction of Jerusalem. And so when Jerusalem was destroyed, it was horrible, and the suffering was horrible. And if you sit down and read some of the 5 chapters of Lamentations, what you'll read is dire things, sorrowful things, hurtful things, weeping things. But he gets to chapter 3, and he's opening up chapter 3 with this sorrow of how this is terrible. He says in verse 1, "I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath," God's wrath. "He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again all day long." Now, this is written specifically to Israel, because Israel was warned by Moses, if you turn against the Lord who has called you and made you this nation, the Lord will bring judgment upon you. And they did exactly what the Lord said don't do. And so this judgment that he is talking about is something that's specifically about Jerusalem and Israel. But the idea of what he's going through is the same as some of what we go through, where we feel like God is against us, where things are just not going right. Verse 8, "Even when I call out for help, he shuts out my prayer. He's barred me with blocks of stone and made my paths crooked." You ever feel like sometimes you pray and God doesn't listen? Well, you're not alone. I feel the same way sometimes, where I have these things I want to see happen, or these desires I want to see accomplished, and I ask God for help, for wisdom, for support, and I just keep asking. Verse 16 says, "He's broken my teeth with gravel." He's just filled with sorrow. And then he gets down to verse 19, 20, and 22, and he says, "I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and gall. I remember them well, and my soul is downcast within me." This is something more than just having a bad feeling. Like there's something inside of him that has been rocked, been disturbed, been troubled. In verse 21, we see a pivot. "And yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope." And this is what he calls to mind. "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. That the Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young." And he continues, but then he gets back into the sorrows again. You know, when we're in the midst of things, we need to remind ourselves that the loving kindness of God has not forsaken us. Just like when we talked about Job last Sunday. One of the things we notice about Job is Job felt very much like God didn't hear, like he wasn't listening. But we find out at the end is that not only was he listening, he was present all the time. Because he knew about Job's 3 friends, and he commended Job for his faith, even in his complaint. And he reprimanded his 3 friends for steering Job in a direction that wasn't like what God is like. That God is certainly attentive to the cries of people, even if it seems like he might be hiding his face for a while. But this reminder here in Lamentations that the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. That word there is hesed. That is the great loving kindness, mercy, compassion that we all believe that God defines, that defines God. For his compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Great is God's faithfulness. Well, if you're watching this long, I want to encourage you that God is faithful and he loves you. He's interested in your story. And maybe there's something that's going on that he's trying to reveal something new about who he is. This season of Lent, it's a journey where we're journeying into the cross because Jesus overcomes even death. I trust your day will be good. Take a look at Lamentations 3, and Lord willing, we'll see you on Sunday. Pastor Dan, First Alliance Church. God bless.